In 1857, the British Empire witnessed the one thing it never believed possible. Thousands of black soldiers, armed with British rifles and trained in British tactics, chose to turn their weapons toward the empire itself. These were not small acts of disobedience or isolated outbreaks of anger. They formed the largest coordinated black military resistance to European imperial rule. In the 19th century, an uprising so dangerous that Britain buried its memory for over a century. The mid-1800s world was suffocating under the weight of an empire ruling nearly a quarter of humanity. But behind that vast power was a secret weakness. Britain did not have enough white soldiers to maintain its global dominance. So it built all-black regiments, the West India Regiments, and the King's African Rifles, staffed by men from Africa and the Caribbean who were promised wages, honor, and security, but were given humiliation instead. They received half the pay of white soldiers, carried out the most dangerous missions, endured floggings for tiny mistakes, faced executions for questioning authority, and were denied any chance of promotion. They were not treated as soldiers. They were tools, black men forced to enforce white supremacy across continents. Yet the empire made a fatal miscalculation. It believed brutality could erase the will to resist. It could not. When black soldiers were deployed to India during the 1857 uprising, they witnessed Indian men, different language, different faith, different culture, being executed, flogged, and terrorized for resisting the same racist system that oppressed them. In that moment, the light collapsed. They recognized themselves in the Indian rebels. They saw that they were being used as weapons against people fighting the same fight they should have been fighting. When they returned home to the Caribbean and saw their families trapped in post-slavery, poverty chains removed in name, but not in reality, the spark of rebellion began to spread. The British responded with their favorite strategy: divide and conquer. They told African soldiers they were superior to Caribbean soldiers. They turned tribes against each other. They whispered lies meant to prevent unity, but the fire could not be stopped. By 1865, Jamaica erupted. Paul Bogle led a rebellion born from starvation and injustice. What Britain never wanted recorded was that soldiers in the West India Regiment sympathized with him. Some leaked information. Some deliberately missed their targets when ordered to fire. Some simply refused. Britain responded with brutality: hundreds executed, villages destroyed. But by then, rebellion had become contagious. Between 1857 and 1866, small mutinies ignited across Trinidad, West Africa, British Honduras, Ceylon, and India. Black soldiers began communicating across oceans through coded letters, songs, and whispered messages in barracks. They weren't just angry, they were organizing. The breaking point came in British Honduras, modern-day Belize. A company of black soldiers was ordered to suppress the Maya people, who were fighting to protect their ancestral lands. As the soldiers read their orders, they recognized the truth. The Maya were fighting for the same freedom their own ancestors fought for. They saw themselves in the struggle, and on the morning of deployment, instead of marching, they raised their rifles not at the Maya, but at their own white officers. One soldier spoke words so dangerous the empire had to erase them: "We will not be weapons against our brothers." The mutiny spread like wildfire. Soldiers seized barracks, controlled military posts, and issued demands unheard of at the time: equal pay, equal treatment, an end to brutal punishments, and the right to refuse to oppress other colonized peoples. This was more than mutiny. It was the birth of global black solidarity. Britain panicked. If black soldiers across Africa, the Caribbean, and Asia united in this way, the empire would collapse from within. So the empire struck back with overwhelming force. White regiments crushed the uprising. Leaders were executed in sham trials. Entire units were split and scattered so they could never unite again. Then Britain delivered the final blow. It erased the rebellion from history. Documents destroyed. Reports rewritten. Mutinies labeled as minor disciplinary issues for over a century. This rebellion simply did not exist in the official historical record. But history has a memory, deeper than ink and paper. Modern researchers have uncovered the truth. More than 5,000 black soldiers across the empire participated in mutinies, sabotage, work stoppages, and underground networks of resistance. Some escaped and joined indigenous resistance groups, using British tactics against the British themselves. These rebels proved something that terrified colonial powers more than any weapon. Oppressed people can choose each other. They can choose solidarity over division, conscience over obedience. Most of these men died without graves, their names erased, their stories buried. But their actions live on. Their resistance shaped Pan-African thought, fueled anti-colonial movements, and inspired global black liberation struggles. They proved that the empire's greatest lie, that colonized peoples were too different to unite, was a myth. They showed that the true power of an empire built on racism depended on keeping its victims divided. In 1857, these black soldiers looked at the rifles Britain placed in their hands and made a choice more dangerous than war. They chose humanity. They chose solidarity. And the echo of that choice still shakes the world today. This is the history the empire tried to bury, and now it cannot be buried again.